Malcolm.
Hi.
Hi. Are you low energy today or high energy today?
I am at a mid energy point right now, but we are approaching 11 a.m., which means my energy dip is coming.
Oh, no. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we need to record this really fast.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I wanted to tell you, I was thinking about perfectionism,
Okay.
largely because I finally got a
You're a
job.
perfectionist? Oh.
Well, and that, I mean, there's that. But I recently got a job. Yay.
Woo.
I don't actually start yet for a few days, so I hope I'm not jinxing myself. Like somehow like they'll like change their mind or something, and then I'll be like, oh, I have this podcast recorded. Anyway, there's my panic setting in. I immediately went into like a panic mode when I got the job offer. And your dad was just like, why are you stressed? Like, this is a huge relief. You know, I haven't had a full-time job for a year and a half. You know, Our family needs us. And he's like, why are you stressed? And it was because I had recently read this book about perfectionism that I was able to understand why. So the book is called The Perfectionist Guide to Losing Control by Katherine Morgan Schafler, who was apparently the on-site therapist at Google for a while.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You definitely need it.
I think any big company.
Yes. Yeah, no, for sure.
I don't think that was a jab at Google in particular.
No. If anything, more companies need them.
Yes, actually. Yeah. It's sidebar. It's kind of ridiculous to me how health insurance companies pay less for mental health appointments than they do for regular doctor's appointments.
Yeah, because they usually like preventative stuff, and if you're going to prevent anything,
and people who are more healthy are going to take better care of themselves.
It's because although people have started to come to realize that mental health is important, a lot of businesses and such have not yet.
Well, it's a Western mindset that we separate the mind and the body. Yeah. Whereas they don't do that in Eastern cultures. They're like, mind and body are together, and so we're just like, oh, there's a problem with your body. We'll cover that.
Is it Western culture or American culture?
Western.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, there's a lot of times people say Western culture, and I'm like, is it Western or are you just talking about America?
I mean, I think America is probably the worst at it. I mean, we have some of the worst health outcomes and all that, but that's a topic for another episode.
Yeah, whatever.
So anyway, in this book, I don't know if she's a Dr. Schafler. I'm not sure what kind of degree she has, but anyway, the author lists 5 types of perfectionists, and I can list all the other ones in a moment, but the procrastinator perfectionist is what I am. And I had to laugh when because I listened to this as an audiobook, and I really wish I would have read it because I don't absorb the information as well when I'm just listening to it.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, take this quiz. And I was like, okay, I got to get a paper and write all this stuff down. And then when she got to the end and she named all of them, I was like, I don't even have to look at my answers. I know that I'm a procrastinator perfectionist.
I feel like if I'm any of the 5, I am procrastinator.
So her description says, procrastinator perfectionists excel at preparing, can see opportunities from a 360-degree perspective, and have good impulse control. Left unchecked, their preparative measures hit a point of diminishing returns, resulting in indecisiveness and inaction. And that is me to a T. Like, and she goes into more details on this in the book, but it's this it was so helpful for me to understand this about myself, right? So if I'm going to start something new or whatever, I feel like everything has to be just so. And so I I panic and I stress out, and
it almost has to be like the only thing you have to worry about type thing.
kind of, yeah. And stuff that I've let go for a long time, I'll suddenly feel like, oh, I have to get this in place. Like, I've been meaning to recalk the bathtub for like months now.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm starting a job in a few days. I need to finish the bathtub before I start the job, which is nonsensical. But it's like this idea in my head that I have to have, like, okay, I need to get everything done around the house, and it needs to be perfect, and I need to have everything planned. And what ends up happening with that is, oftentimes, if it's stuff that's a little more like unregulated, like it's not a job, it's not an obligation I made to somebody else or something like that, it just means I don't do anything because it's never quite right.
Yeah.
You know, and that's because the image can remain perfect in my head. I mean, I've been saying for 20 years I'm going to write a book. And in my head, it's like, oh, I've written the perfect book that, you know, is going to be a bestseller. And that sounded a little John Mulvaney-ish. But if I go to actually write that book, then it could turn out to be terrible.
Yeah.
You know? So anyway, do you want to hear all the kinds of perfectionists?
Yes, let's go for it.
Okay. So there's intense perfectionists.
Oh.
I think you're going to hear a lot of these and be like, I think I'm all of them.
No, I don't think I'm an intense perfectionist, but I know.
Oh, you know some
intense perfectionist.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I don't think you're a Parisian perfectionist. You'll understand why when I read the description. So, intense perfectionists are effortlessly direct and maintain razor sharp focus when it comes to achieving their goals.
Yeah, no.
Left unchecked, their standards can go from high to impossible, and they can be punitive with others and themselves for not meeting their standards.
I like it that it's left unchecked. Like it's like this thing that we're doing. It's not.
Well, here's the important thing that I loved about her book. She said we tend to look at perfectionism as a bad thing, but it is not in and of itself a bad thing.
I mean, if you make something perfect, then that's pretty good.
I mean, hey, but the idea is like there's maladaptive perfectionism and there's adaptive perfectionism. And so what happens a lot is the maladaptive perfectionism is what people focus on, and they're like, oh, perfectionist, blah, you know.
I do not go blah, blah, blah.
So anyway, that was intense perfectionists. Classic perfectionists are highly reliable.
Classic.
You're classic. Classic perfectionists are highly reliable, consistent, and detail-oriented, and they add stability to their environment. Left unchecked, they struggle to adapt to spontaneity or a change in routine and can have a hard time developing meaningful relationships.
See, this is just like, I'm like imagining Shelby or something like that. And she has one of these, and I'm like watching her and making sure she's doing fine. I turn her away for one moment, and suddenly she's unchecked. And she's like, I turn around, and she's like perfected everything around her. And I'm like, what?
Oh no, we left her alone.
We left her unchecked.
Oh, that's funny.
I understand what it's saying, but that's just where my mind goes to.
Yeah. Like you got to keep an eye on them at all times.
Yes.
So that was intense and then classic. Now we have Parisian perfectionists. I kept meaning to look up that word because all I can think of is somebody who lives in Paris.
I know. I just...
Parisian perfectionists possess a live wire understanding of the power of interpersonal connection and hold a strong capacity for empathy.
Couldn't be me.
That's why I was like, I don't think it's Malcolm. I don't think Malcolm's left unchecked, their desire to connect to others can metastasize into toxic people pleasing. Yeah. So that was Parisian. Then we have Procrastinator Perfectionist, which I already read, which, you know, if they're left unchecked, their preparative measures hit a point of diminishing returns, which all I can think of is Annie in Community going, oh, sorry, that's one of my favorite parts. Anyway, then the last one is messy perfectionists. Messy perfectionists effortlessly push through the anxiety of new beginnings, are superstar idea generators, adapt to spontaneity well, and are naturally enthusiastic. Left unchecked, they struggle to stay focused on their goals, ultimately spreading their energy too thin to follow through on their commitments.
Yeah, I think the look at me was warranted for that one.
So the 5 are intense, classic, Parisian, procrastinator, and messy. Do you want to take the quiz and find out which one you are?
Yes, I do. I think I might already know, but
I think I might already know. And she does say like you may have bits of the others. Like there's other ones that I read and I'm like, oh, that's me. Or you might be like one type of perfectionist at work and another one at home. Or yeah. So I'll let you go ahead, read the quiz.
Okay, so have you ever displayed an angry outburst at work, such as shouting, banging your desk, or slamming doors? Oh, there's a lot of options. Okay.
So the options are, just describe like the options in general.
I mean, there's like yes, never, and then there's a few no's that like kind of explain what the no's are. Like, no, I don't struggle with managing anger, but I can struggle with impulse control. Or no, I want to express a lot, but I'm waiting for the right time.
No, my outbursts are completely warranted.
I don't know which one I am. I will select that one.
What'd you select?
I selected that I am. No, I don't, because I'm trying to be a people pleaser at work. That's not what it said, but that's basically what it meant.
What it said.
Which of the below is most likely to bother you? Observing that the people around you aren't performing at the highest standard possible, going on a vacation with no itinerary. I know people that are the itinerary person.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. When you know someone doesn't like you, you've decided you want to paint your living room. You're given a color wheel of 50 paint options and told you need to pick a color in the next 10 minutes. That one's funny. Being told you can only focus on one goal for the next 6 months. Yeah, I'm going to do being told you can only
focus on one goal.
Yeah,
I kind of figured that would be your answer.
That's not going to happen for me.
Yeah.
I'll do that to myself. I'll be like, okay, for the next 6 months, I'm going to focus on doing this thing so I can achieve this goal.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, don't even remember what I was doing. Which statement best describes you? I impose extremely high standards on those around me. I can be punitive with others when they don't meet my standards. I'm reliable, highly organized, and I love planning. I sometimes get the sense that other people experience me as uptight. I get frustrated that other people's opinions and feelings towards me matter to me. I often feel needy because I want the deepest connections possible. I get frustrated with my indecisiveness. I wish I could allow myself to be a little more impulsive about taking clear action towards my goals. I love the rush of momentum at the start of a new project. I feel unstoppable in the beginning, but I struggle to stay focused when I get distracted by other passions. That one is me. If someone were giving you praise, they'd be most likely to say that you're great at being direct and keeping razor-sharp focus on the goal at hand, that you're great at doing exactly what you say you will do, exactly when you say you will do it, in the exact way you're expected to do it. That just stresses me out. That sentence alone. Just
the sentence.
Yes. That you're great at engendering meaningful connections with others. I don't know what that means.
Like making them.
Okay, just say that. That you're great at preparing, asking smart questions, and considering alternative scenarios. That you're great at imagining possibilities, getting inspired, and generating ideas. I feel like the last two are close to each other, and those are what I am. So I don't know which of the two.
Read them again.
That you're great at preparing, asking smart questions, and considering alternative scenarios, or that you're great at imagining possibilities, getting inspired, and generating ideas. I feel like the last one is more me.
Yeah.
I feel like the preparing part is what puts that.
Yeah.
I'm great at preparing now for D&D, but that's about it. But that's just because I do it routinely every week.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll do that you're great at imagining possibilities, etc. Which statement best describes you? I get frustrated by others' inefficiency and lack of focus. Couldn't be me. I don't care if other people like me. I want to get the job done. I consider it somewhat offensive when people make adjustments to the structure and timeline of anything, a meeting, a dinner, a vacation, etc. We should be able to make one plan and stick to it. I feel like all of these are going to be me. I spend more energy than I want, wondering what people think of me. I know I have a lot more to offer than I'm currently offering in my relationships at work, in my community, etc. But I can't unleash my full potential until I take care of a few things first.
That's me.
Yep. I'm always resisting the urge to do things like purchase domain names for businesses I want to start. I have more ideas than I could ever know what to do with. Actually, I have too much anxiety with the last one. Like, I would never purchase a domain name until I'm already like 90% of the way through my business. Because I'm like, oh, what if I buy this domain name? I stop doing the thing, and then I'm like paying $10 a month or whatever it is.
Right.
I feel like I'm either frustrated by others' inefficiency and lack of focus, or consider it somewhat offensive when people make adjustments to the structure and timeline of anything. Because there's like people where like, I'll make a plan, they'll agree to it, and then they're like, but maybe we could do this one thing instead. And I'm like, no.
We already made the plan.
Why'd you agree then?
Yeah.
Because I also feel like I don't care if other people like me to an extent. I feel like if I'm annoyed by the person, I don't care if they like me. But I feel like if I like the person, then I care if they like me.
I want everyone to like me.
No, if I don't like someone, I don't care if they like me. So
I wish I didn't, but I sometimes do.
I'll do that. I consider it somewhat offensive.
Okay.
I've received feedback along the lines of being mean, intense, or intimidating, not being spontaneous enough, being too rigid, definitely not, being too much of a people pleaser, definitely not taking enough risks, being too indecisive, being disorganized, scatterbrained, or poor at following through on commitments. I have received a lot of feedback along the lines of being disorganized, scatterbrained, or poor at following through on commitments. So
I plead the fifth.
It's most meaningful to me when someone follows through on what they said they were going to do, when they said they were going to do it, and to the level of quality I expect. And I'm able to offer myself and others stability through routine, structure, and predictability. When another person works to understand who I am as a person and why that matters to me, and why what matters to me matters to me. No, not me. That I enter into new opportunities, relationships, jobs, everyday decisions as prepared and as sure of my decision as possible. I don't want to commit unless I'm highly confident it's the right choice. What is the phrase I say all the time? I don't care. That I lead passionate life where I entertain as many opportunities as possible to create new projects, develop new skills, travel, grow, and continue exploring. I feel like I'm just the first one when someone follows through on what they said they were going to do, which is ironic because I don't always do that. Yeah, I'm 57% a messy perfectionist.
Okay.
14% a classic, 14% the rest. Or no, I'm 14% of classic, intense, and Parisian.
That's interesting.
But not of the...
Not procrastinator perfectionist?
Yeah, not that one.
Interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, I had you pegged as a messy perfectionist.
I did too.
I think most people kind of intuitively know. I also think some of the things you talked about, some of the answers you're like waffling between, I feel like certain things bug you at work, but not at home.
Yeah, I'm very different at work, with friends.
Yeah.
And at home. Like it really depends on the relationship that I have with the person. And I think that goes for a lot of things, really. Like I have different level of expectations depending on where I'm at. Like if I'm at work, sure, I make friends with the people at work, but I still expect all of us to do our job and everything like that. And I'm not going to worry about people pleasing to a super high extent. But when I'm with my friends, I think I'm more relaxed, and sometimes that causes me to like miss stuff. Like sometimes when I'm doing stuff with friends, that means I'm like, oh, I'm more likely to be late. Like when I go to work and stuff, I'm 10 minutes early every single day, unless something happens and I can't be early. But with my friends, I feel like I am consistently either right on time or late. And I think it's just because like my brain's like, oh, I don't feel like they really care.
Well, the consequences are less, right?
Yeah.
You know? So.
Because, I mean, if I'm late to work, then they're like, hey, what the hell?
Right, yeah.
But if
that's something that could eventually, you could lose your job.
But because everyone's just naturally polite to people if you're late to
Right.
your friend's house, they're just like, oh no, it's fine. I had to like do one last thing anyway before you arrived or whatever it is.
You know, it's interesting that you say that because I started to notice something when I was doing some research for my dissertation. And every meeting I had with people I was interviewing, all the women were on time and almost all of the men were late.
To what?
For me to interview them for my dissertation.
Huh.
And I was interviewing mostly like business people.
Yeah.
And so I think like my theory, and this is just this is just totally a theory, that because I was just a student interviewing for them for their dissertation, they could be late to come see me, the men.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they didn't care.
Yeah.
Because I was not worth, whatever. But for some reason, the women were on time. So I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. I think there's different values we place on people, and then unfortunately, it kind of
It drives behavior.
and unfortunately, it makes us sometimes treat our friends worse than we treat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, I'm late to stuff with friends all the time, but I wouldn't be late to work. So
Yeah.
yeah, and that's not very considerate of me. Sorry, friends.
At least I'm not like super late,
Yeah.
Like I would feel really bad, and I would understand if my friends were upset if I was like half an hour to an hour late, unless something happened, obviously. But,
Right. Yeah.
which has happened in the past. I mean, there are times when like June had something wrong or something like that, or
Right.
like she was having a seizure, so I was
Yeah.
our old dog for
Right. Yeah.
yeah for clarity.
Yeah. Not a person.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I was late because of June having seizures too. So I understand what you're saying.
I'd even missed out on like a good chunk of work or something like that because of that too. I mean, it's not just my friends, but although my work seemed less inclined to believe me.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. I actually was thinking about this the other day, and because I shouldn't say like, oh, I wouldn't be late to work, because I've been late to work. But I'm less likely to be late to work. But I still have this tendency whenever I'm leaving the house to be like, do I have everything? You know what I mean? And I think that comes back to that wanting to be fully prepared.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so I'm afraid to leave the house, because once I do, all preparation is done.
No, I'm definitely like, oh, I have my phone on me. Well, that's all I really need if I forget anything else. Because if I forget anything else, then I can just get it later. Or, like, at least for my job, I just need to be there.
Right.
I don't need to bring anything with me.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the jobs I've had are, office jobs. So I've had to have, like, files, papers, pens, things, But, fortunately, my commute is not very far now.
Yes. Walk up the stairs.
Yep. So it's not like I have to worry about forgetting anything,
Yeah, you just walk to the other room.
Yeah. Another thing in this book that she pointed out that I thought was very fascinating was that perfectionism is viewed differently in men versus women.
Yeah.
Like in men,
For
it's
sure.
ambition. And in women, it can be like perceived as being what was it, like aggressive or persnickety or, and there's just one quote from the book that I thought was interesting. Perfectionism in women is only accepted when directed towards domestic labor.
Huh.
And you know what's really interesting? I just read a thing about pumpkin spice this morning.
Oh, back to the pumpkin spice.
Yep. Which, by the way, I'm so excited. John Oliver came back last night, and every year he has this like intense pumpkin spice thing where a guy's yelling, "Pumpkin spice is back!" Like, you know what I mean? So it's just, I always enjoy that. It's funny. But anyway, what we've come to know as pumpkin spice is just like fall spices that people used to always use. And I know where I was reading this. This was on my friend's
Yeah, most
Facebook
pumpkin
page.
spice syrups like flavorings of kinds
don't actually have pumpkin.
Don't actually have any pumpkin in it whatsoever.
Yeah. So
and that's why I enjoy the one that we make so much, because it actually
use
has
actually pumpkin. Yeah. So my friend posted this, and he's said pumpkin. She posted it from someone else. This person said, pumpkin spice hate season is coming again. So here's a reminder from his historian. What we call pumpkin spice is just the classic English and Anglo-American sweet spice mix: cinnamon, ginger, cloves, nutmeg, cardamom, and mace. It's been used in traditional desserts from apple pie to plum pudding for centuries. When did people start having a problem with it? Not when women were in kitchens putting it in their pies, but when women decided they liked it in the coffee they grabbed on the way to school or work. So when you see people snickering at the pumpkin spice products this fall, remember what they're mocking: women choosing something for their own pleasure rather than devoting themselves to pleasing others. I thought that was really interesting. And I think there's a lot of things that fall in that category. Is like, as soon as women turn something from, domestic to, advancing their own pleasure or careers or whatever, it's like, oh, now it's bad.
Yeah, I just find pumpkin spice funny and bad.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I have definitely done my fair share of mocking the pumpkin spice thing, just because it is like everywhere, and there's always like really weird things that, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure.
But I don't.
No, I'm mocking pumpkin spice because I'm sexist.
Right.
Oh yeah.
but like, I know plenty of people who love. My cousin was here yesterday or the day before and was like, I love pumpkin spice lattes. I'm not gonna,
It's kind of funny because my boss hates the idea of pumpkin spice, finds it so annoying since it doesn't have any pumpkin in it.
Right.
So he basically makes it for work, but calls it fall spice.
Oh yeah, I remember you told me that.
Yeah.
But maybe it's like spice for pumpkins.
I mean, what?
It's not called pumpkin spice because there's pumpkin in it.
You're supposed to put it on pumpkins and just take a nice bite out of it.
Or make a pumpkin pie.
No, just right on the pumpkin.
Just throw it on there, just rind and all.
Like an apple. Yeah, and I find it funny. He's funny with that kind of stuff. Like he also just hates like holidays and like seasonal stuff in general. So a lot of those like seasonal or holiday type things, he just makes fun of them all the time, and it's very funny.
Well, I have to admit, I love the peppermint mocha. I don't feel like that has to be a holiday thing. Like mint chocolate is a year-round thing, but
peppermint is a spring thing, so I don't understand how that became we did look it up one point of why it's a Christmassy.
Well, because I think because of candy canes and stuff like that. Like there was a whole history of
where did those come from?
There was. I remember we did research like the history of that at one point. I don't remember.
We need to get this winter are those chocolate candy canes.
The Hershey ones?
Yeah, those were so good.
I know. Shout out to Hershey.
Yeah.
Hershey's in my blood, so I just
got chocolate flowing through.
I think they do put it in the water out where, I grew up right outside of
it's like
Hershey.
It's like the chocolate factory, just like chocolate rivers.
Yeah.
Hershey.
I think if you live in that vicinity of Hershey, you just sort of like...
I could see within 100 years Hershey buying enough land in the area to do that kind of thing. So we'll see.
Did you know that Hershey is in Derry County?
That's funny.
But it's spelled D-E-R-R-Y. I mean, D-E... Yeah, did I say D-E-R-R-Y? That's what I meant. Yeah. But I still think it's funny because it sounds like dairy.
Yeah, it does.
Hershey's in Derry County. Oh, my goodness. So, anyway, thoughts on this perfectionism stuff?
Yes.
You want to share them?
No. No, it's definitely something where it's like, if you call someone a perfectionist, then you're usually like making fun of them, which fair enough. But
yeah.
But also like, sometimes it's also hard being a perfectionist because you like feel driven to do something that's unnecessary. But sometimes it's nice being a perfectionist because then you can really crack down on something and like come up with something good.
Well, I think it's what I'd said earlier that there's maladaptive and adaptive forms.
Yes.
Of it. And I think that was one of the biggest keys I took away from this book, because I had always looked at perfectionism as like something I had to overcome.
Yeah.
You know, not something I could use as like a power for good. You know? and that was just so helpful, because making that mindset change, it was kind of like, well, how can I work with the perfectionism? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rather than like, yeah.
I've kind of started, well, I started doing both, of working against it and with it. Mm-hmm. I definitely have figured out how it works for me, like how I can make it so that way I know if something happens or if I have a certain idea, then I can jump into it and get a lot of stuff done very quickly. But I also know that because I'm a messy perfectionist, at the very least, is I am very entrepreneurial. And so I'll come up with new ideas and be like, for 2 weeks, just like
Gung-ho on
work
it.
my ass off until, and then I quit after that.
You also come by that entrepreneurship, honestly, because like my whole side of the family is just chock full of people who own their own businesses. And then, you know, your dad and I have owned our own businesses, and like it's in the blood.
Yeah. But I've just learned to kind of like, instead of diving right into it, to actually plan ahead and see if this is something where I'll most likely die out. Like me, there's times where I've wanted to just like switch jobs on the fly. And I'm like, that's not a good idea, because one, I might sever a connection with the job that I can't then go back to because of this like quick, I can't think, impulse. And then maybe this other job is actually horrible.
Yeah.
And so there are times where I've just like waited and thought it out. And like I thought about going back to the zoo at one point. I think you remember that. And I was like, I'm going to give it a moment before I just like decide to go back.
Yeah.
And then they started doing concerts again at the zoo. And I remembered how horrible it was to work the concerts at the zoo. So I was like, never mind. I'm not going to go back.
Yeah.
But then there's other times where it's like I have an idea that's quick. And so then I message my mother about it within 10 minutes to see if she wants to do it, of me thinking about it. And she says yes, and then we end up doing a podcast together.
So there's that.
Yeah, and it worked out pretty well. So, like, you know, there's
I mean, so far we're only a few episodes in. But the thing that I found funny about that was you messaged me like, hey, do you want to do a podcast with me? And I was just like, yes. And then I was like, what about? I was just like, I don't care what it's about. I'm doing a podcast with Malcolm. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was definitely like I thought about it within like 10 minutes and was just like, yeah, sure, why not? And I just messaged you, and and that's how it all started.
Yeah. Well, I think...
Welcome to the origin story of the podcast.
No radiation involved. I think that's one of the things that people don't often think about with entrepreneurs is, you might have like a bunch of ideas, and some of them might fail, and some of them you just give up on or whatever. But that's like the key for most entrepreneurs, is they just like, oh, that didn't work out, I'm going to do the next idea. Like you have to
learn
kind of,
from it.
Yeah, you learn, and you kind of have to cycle through things until one hits, you know?
Yeah. That's something where I think it was good that I wasn't because I feel like a lot of schools turn you away from doing stuff like that. Like a lot of schools, I feel like, have taught me, until I went to my private school, that like you need to do something that's stable, and you need to do something that like will succeed type thing. So you pick
Very
a job
risk
that
averse.
works. Like you go to college, you get a degree, and then the people there at the college will help you get into a job, and then so there's like barely any risk at all. But then I went to my private school, and it wasn't the complete opposite, because it was a college prep private high school. So it was very much like, we're going to help you get the job that you want.
Right.
So there was a lot of the risk-free stuff, but there was also a lot of the, here's how to build your own business. Here's how you can launch your own platform. Here's how. And so like my one teacher that I loved a lot in high school, like just allowed me to use the media studio in the school anytime that I wanted to, as long as obviously there wasn't like a class in there or something.
Right.
And so I use it like every day after school.
Well, and they also gave you those opportunities to explore what you want, like basically an independent study.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I did an independent study for a while and presented it.
And yeah, and so they encourage you to kind of think through different things, and which I think is really important, because I think it's really difficult when you're in high school to think about what you want to do for the rest of your life.
Especially since you don't have the resources
Right.
to really do it.
Which and you don't know what's out there. Like there are
Yeah.
things that I never knew were majors.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you tend to just think in terms of the big, like English, science, like, you know, and maybe you might think like, oh, this specific type of science or this specific type of engineering. But I learned about all kinds of things when I was at Virginia Tech that I was like, I had no idea that was a major. And like, how do people discover that? You know?
I mean, they just get interested in something, they look it up, and
Yeah,
bada bing, bada boom.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Like, it kind of sucks. Like, I feel like there's the opposite of that too. There's a lot of majors where it could be split up into more majors. Like my major of communications. That is so broad.
Yeah.
And so many of my quote unquote like necessary classes that I had to take to graduate were 100% unnecessary. Like,
well, I would push back on that a little bit. It might have been more necessary than you were able to recognize in the moment. Like, I think
I still look back to my news class today, and there was nothing necessary about that news class for me.
For you. But since the major was broad, they had to cover journalism. They had to cover,
That's my thing. I mean, if you have academic advisors, then they should help you put you on your path. You shouldn't be forced to do classes just because you're part of the major.
Well, that's one of my problems with higher education is there's a lot of expected extra classes that I'm betraying my liberal arts upbringing, but I just think there's a lot of extra classes that aren't necessary, and I understand the desire to make a well-rounded student, but requiring like so many of these extras, it just feels excessive to me.
Yeah.
But the problem is with something like the communications program you were in, they probably didn't have the resources to be able to specialize as much. So there's probably other schools that offered that. You know what I mean?
I don't know, because where I went was pretty up there, surprisingly, for
oh, that's right. They had
media stuff.
Yeah, they had some cool deals. Yeah.
Yeah, they had some good stuff. But there were like no classes for it, which is
well,
weird.
The other thing is that there are certain things where you get like the generic degree and then you get the specialization if you go on to like your master's or something like that. But again, I sort of question that structure.
Yeah.
I it's funny because I have a PhD and I have so many critiques of education, and you'd think like I would be like defending, but there's a lot of unnecessary, really super unnecessary courses. College could be a lot quicker. I also really feel like people in a lot of cases would do better if they had like an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
And they actually learned to do the thing, and they could actually be paid while they were learning to do the thing.
Yeah.
And they'd probably be more successful than if they just went and got, more successful as in better at it, not more successful in getting jobs, because you still have to have a degree for so many jobs. But
yeah, I will say one thing that was nice about going to that school was that they had a very good accessibility program. So they probably recognized my perfectionism, but more so in the form of ADHD.
Right.
And so I did get a lot of accommodations for classes and stuff. And school was surprisingly one of those things that I was like also late for, but that's just because I hated school. So
Right. I mean, well, that's another reason the argument in favor of apprenticeships is there are people that school does just not work for them.
Yeah. And yeah, like it was kind of weird because I went from private school to college and just wasn't like, I felt like the professors were so about their own class and not about the bigger picture of the students. One of my teachers was. She was a great teacher. But then my news teacher was like, you're in this, you have to take this class, even though if you want to do news or you don't want to do news. But you like have to love news.
You know, I have to
got in
say,
an argument with him about how news is stupid, but
news is stupid?
yes.
In general, news is stupid.
I meant the way that news is made is stupid.
Well, that could be a whole topic right there because it was originally meant to be just reporting. And
I tried to argue in the favor of bias, and he would not hear my arguments.
In favor of bias?
Yes, in favor of bias.
Do tell.
Do tell? Not bias influencing facts, but the people who are reporting giving their opinions on the matter. And
interesting.
Because that's what I do. And anyone who listens to independent news things, all of those independent news things usually give their bias and their opinions.
Yeah.
And so, but they say the facts and then they give their bias. So that way it's separated. Because
yeah, but is it though? Like, because your bias could influence how you're reporting the story.
But it does it anyway.
I mean, that's fair. So you're in favor of it being explicit.
Yes. Like if bias is going to influence your facts, might as well explain what your bias is. That way, if you don't agree with the bias, you can maybe look up a different source for the facts.
Yeah. And I would add the caveat. I think this is what you mean, but that your bias might influence your opinion of what the story is, but you don't make stuff up.
Yes.
Like that's the biggest problem with a lot of extreme news networks is they just make stuff up or they report on fringe ideas and give them legitimacy.
Yeah, but somehow my like news professor was like he had this idea that like the people on the news could not tell a lie.
Yeah,
or like have their bias influence them. And I was like, I am having trouble understanding your understanding of the news.
You know, I spoke with a communications professor once, and I was researching a paper on like political bias and stuff like that. And he was a conservative, but he said a couple of things that he said to me that I thought were really interesting. One is he said that more Democrats, well, not Democrats specifically, but liberals, are attracted to journalism because liberals are very interested in justice, which I thought was interesting. I was like, yeah, that's a bad thing. And secondly, this was a while back. Obama said something about how you're not successful in a company all by yourself. Like it takes the whole community kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so like the roads and bridges that lead to your company are paid for with public funds and other people, you know what I'm saying? And so it was kind of pointing out like, no, you're not just independently successful. It just doesn't work that way, right?
Yeah.
And he's talking about these roads and he goes, you didn't build that, and that was part of his speech. Well, Fox News and a whole bunch of other people, other news programs took that and just made it sound like he said you didn't build that about the company.
Like to the people that actually did build it?
No, to the company. Like he was saying
oh, I get what you're
about the company. Like saying you didn't build your own company.
I mean, kind of true.
But he didn't say that. He said you didn't build the roads.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? And this professor
Using
looked
stuff out of context.
Right. And this professor looked straight at me and was like, I know that's out of context, but I also I think it's representative of what Obama thinks. So I didn't have no problem with people sharing it that way.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, okay. So Anyway, wow, we've really gotten off track.
Kind of.
So, perfectionism. Maybe we should wrap it up.
Maybe. It has to be perfect.
We can't stop until we have really just worked this whole thing out.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Is it so funny?
It's so funny.
Yeah, I think it was good. I mean, it was kind of fun learning what kind of perfectionist I am. That's for sure. And I'm gonna wield it against my chores, I guess.
I think the main takeaway is perfectionism in and of itself is not bad. There's ways that you can harness it for good.
For good.
And there's ways that it can be maladaptive and detrimental to your mental health or to your relationships with others. And so it's all about like learning how to use it to your advantage.
Some of it's even just like knowing about it.
Yeah. Knowledge is power.
Yeah. Because I always feel weird because I feel like I'm very good at identifying how I think. Like I'm very good at thinking about how I think. So people will be like, oh, what's wrong? And I feel like where most people say, I don't know, I could list the exact reasons why I'm doing these things. But then I feel like if I do that, then people are gonna be like, well, then why didn't you just not do that?
Right.
So then I just say, I don't know.
Right. But sometimes it's in retrospect, right? You're like, oh, I see why I did that. And it's harder to change your behavior than just being like, oh, I do this every time. I'm just not going to do that anymore.
Yeah,
Like, that's
exactly.
really hard to do. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I was debating just starting to do it where I just say exactly what it is and throw people off because I'm able to just explain every aspect of my process of thinking. But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well,
Well.
time to go.